Well, as you guys can see, we are not in my boat right now. I've had some motor issues, spent some days in Mitch's boat, but now we're back in a loaner boat for now. Warner's Dock, which is where I bought my boat, was gracious enough to give me a loaner boat to fish with until mine's done, which is awesome. So anyways, we just filmed a cool video a few days ago on slip bobber fishing. Super effective way to fish this time of year. We've been doing a ton of that and catching a whole bunch of fish doing it. You know, we haven't been fishing a whole lot of weeds, or that video was mostly filmed on rock. You know, not a lot of lakes have that good deep rock structure. So the other kind of key piece of structure we look for this time of year is a lot of weeds. We're not really fishing deep weed edges. We're fishing right in weeds, whether that's cabbage or just over the top, a lot of the emerging stuff that's out here on the main lake. And we're pulling spinners through that on a spinning rod. This video is going to be pretty short, pretty to the point, so we're going to throw in a few fish catches, show you some rigging, show you where you're looking for structure wise, and hopefully catch the fish. Stay tuned. Oh, here we go. Hooked up. That easy. Saw those fish on side imaging right as we came through them. You can actually see a few more down there off to the right. We'll probably throw some screenshots into some of that stuff, and it is another nice walleye. There we go. Another nice walleye there. Sorry about all the terrible camera angles tonight. Don't have my normal tripod with, as I'm not in my normal boat. So nice about 19-inch haired area walleye there. On the spinner, is only about 10 or 12 feet down right in the weed edge. We're gonna let that guy go. All right, where are we fishing? You know, that's always the most important piece to the puzzle. You're obviously, doesn't matter how good you are at doing this, you're not gonna catch any fish unless you're around fish. So typically I'm picking areas that's either a big flat or some kind of break that's got a little bit of flatness to it, you know, where I got this emerging weeds. You know, I'm looking for really any kind of new good weeds. You know, typically kind of cabbage is like one of the ideal ones. But basically I'm looking around some of the biggest pieces of shallow water structure on the lake, right? That has basically good weed growth. On these clear lakes that I'm fishing a lot of like 8 or 9 feet to like 12, 13 feet right now. And the fish are pretty much right in the weeds. Sometimes they'll be on the inside edge, sometimes they'll be on the outside edge, but for the most part they're right in the weeds right now. They're not too thick yet. Most of these weeds are a foot, 2, 3 feet tall, and stuff like that. So you know, pick out those biggest shallow water pieces of structure on the lake, start cruising around looking for weed growth. And basically when you're in good weed growth this time of year, it's going to look something like this right here. Now, I always like to run my side imaging while I'm doing this, because a lot of times I can see how, if I'm in fish, you know, these weeds aren't up so thick yet that I'm not going to be able to see fish in them. I can still see fish in the weeds. So when I'm looking for fish on side imaging in the weeds doing this, I set my range at 50 feet side to side, and some fish are going to look like this right here. You can see some fuzziness from the weeds, and then you can see the fish right in them there. We'll throw some red circles around those or something like that, but you know, that's just kind of verification, lets you know that you're around fish, stuff like that. You know, if you get in a scenario where you're doing this a whole bunch and you're all of a sudden, every time you go through one little spot you catch a fish, throughout a whole big weed bed, and you see a whole bunch more on side imaging, then, you know, then it probably makes more sense to cast or do something else other than troll the whole spot, right? Even if you are catching fish. So kind of keep that in mind too. But most of the time this time of year, this early summer, we got water temps that are like 65 right now. These fish are relatively scattered throughout these big shallow weed bed flats. This whole trolling spinners real tight, and a lot of this new weed growth is pretty much a killer on every kind of lake you can walleye fish on right now. It's a great way to cover water, find where the fish are, and a lot of times it is the best way to catch them this time of year. Fish on. Hooked up. What is it though? You just catch so many different stuff doing this. It's just kind of a crapshoot every time. But I think we have the right fish on. He's digging hard. Oh yeah. Another perfect weed walleye. All day long like that one. Just a beautiful fish. Super fun way to fish. You know, it's extremely efficient fishing this way, especially if you're lazy like me and you don't always feel like casting. You know, I love casting and snap jigging around. I'm gonna change my sun angle here a little bit, but I love casting around, getting these fish to eat something real aggressive. But when these fish are real sprawled out in weeds, there's rarely a better way to catch them than pulling spinners like this. Yeah, you can go through and side image them, but most of the time it just kind of confirms that they're just kind of sprawled out throughout a big area. You can cast through there, but pulling a spinner this way, you know, it still gets that hands-on experience with the rod. You still get to feel the fish bite, and to be honest, you're a lot better off, like we talked about, just kind of fishing 1 or 2 rods at a time versus fishing a whole bunch of rods, just because that depth's going to change so much, and you're going to be in weeds, out of weeds, stuff like that. So extremely efficient way to fish and an absolute blast. We're going to get that guy back in the water. Hooked up, fish on. Right where he should have been. And what is it is the question. Kind of fishing a little bit of rocks and weeds here, but it is another nice walleye. Oh yeah, nice northern Wisconsin walleye. Got that spinner rig right in the corner of his mouth. There he is. Another beautiful weed walleye. There we go. Another beautiful walleye there. We'll let him go. Get back after it. All right, so now that we know where we're gonna fish, now we're gonna talk about the rig a little bit. This is just a soft action, 6'10", medium light, St. Croix Mojo bass. It's kind of an all-around jig rod. If you were gonna pick a rod just to kind of exclusively for doing this, you'd probably pick something a little longer, a little more moderate, something like that, but it doesn't really matter too much. I like fishing 10-pound braid. I like braid because I can feel every little weed I take, or if my spinner's not moving, that's important too. You know, you gotta know if that spinner's moving back there, if it's gummed up with weeds, stuff like that. So a big thing this time of year is I wanna run, whenever I'm pulling in real heavy weeds like this, I run a spinner rig with 1 hook. And then I also like to run one with a bigger blade, for mainly just so I can feel it a lot better. And I just kind of like spinners with bigger blades, just more vibration in the water, kind of naturally. So a little bigger blade. I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to color most of the time, or bead color, but single hook, bigger blade, you're gonna be able to feel that vibration. That single hook's gonna go through the weeds a lot more. Now I'm not rigging up a full crawler on here. I'm not even using crawlers, honestly. I'm taking a leech, and let me turn my trolling motor off here. So I'm fishing with leeches, and I'm hooking them once, just kind of right through the sucker. I want this thing to be kind of as long as a leech is gonna get. Taking it, going right kind of down the long ways through the sucker, then out like that. You don't want it to be too sideways on there, otherwise it's gonna kind of almost, it'll jumble itself up a little more. Leeches are kind of notorious for tangling in the line, so I kind of like it when it's nice long presentation like that. Then on the weight, you know, this is just your typical spinner rig you buy in a store. You gotta unwrap it, and then I'm running a quarter ounce, basically just Lindy weight. You can run like a bullet weight, something like that too. I kind of like these, as they're kind of like a keel weight almost when I'm running. And then it's basically just your feeling. I don't even know the exact line length and how far back a quarter ounce would be to be on the bottom. But you know, I'm fishing a lot of this 8 to kind of 12 foot stuff, right? So I'm just kind of lobbing it back there, and I'll just kind of let it down to the bottom basically, right? Once I'm on the bottom, which doesn't take too terribly long, I'll do a lot of like rod kind of slow pumping like this to kind of find where I'm at bottom. You know, I don't want to be constantly dragging bottom, because obviously it's just going to be too low. I'm going to get too many weeds and that kind of stuff. So a lot of times what I want to be able to hold my rod right here, kind of in front of me with my forward arm. And when I drop it all the way back, I want to be able to touch bottom just barely with that weight, and then I'll pull it back forward to fish it. That way I know I'm probably, you know, within 2-3 feet of the bottom or so. Now if I keep hitting bottom like over and over, I'm getting a lot of weeds, I'll basically just take another reel turn in. You know, or if when I drop my rod back I'm not hitting bottom, I'll just basically let some line out, keep going, and start over again. The speed I'm running is pretty much 1.2 to, you know, 1.4, 1.5. Speed's not super important when you're doing this. You know, you're doing a lot of turning because I'm kind of following that specific edge where I think the fish are. So, you know, a lot of times, you know, you're never just holding your rod here. A lot of times you'll be reeling in a whole bunch of line, and you'll kind of come off the brake a little bit, or, you know, you'll end up going faster and you'll drop some line out, you know, drop it back, make sure you're on bottom again. So it's a lot of manipulating where your bait's at and what it's doing with your rod. And a lot of times I'll just kind of pull it forward real slow to make sure that you can still feel that blade hammering away. And then the important part is, you know, if you get a bite, once you feel a bite, most of the time it'll be initial thunk, you'll feel a line tick, and then it'll just start kind of slowly going back. And what you don't want to do is the second you feel that boom, just turn around and reef into the fish. Basically when you feel that bite, like you'll see in a lot of the clips, basically what I do is I just drop my rod back real slow until it's right about here, and that fish, just let that fish load up on the bait, and then it's just kind of a big sweep forward. It's not a big jarring hook set or anything like that. And basically you just want to make sure that when that fish pops it, that you give him a little bit of time to kind of basically take that and make sure he's got it all the way in his mouth. So pretty simple there. You know, most of the time I'm trolling spinners. I got 8 other rods out, and we're raking a lot of water. But this time of year, when you're covering these real small specific areas like this, looking for these fish right in these weeds, this is a super effective way to do it. And you're gonna get a lot of weeds like I just did right there. A lot of times you can just kind of bounce them off, make sure your spinner is still going, reel in a little bit of line and keep going. So you're always manipulating this, you know, kind of as you go, watching your graph to how deep you are, feeling for bottom, making sure you're out of the weeds and stuff like that. Oh, there's a bite. Got him. I was actually just messing with my map to see where I was, and he popped it. Right as the sun's going down. Not a big one, it's a feisty one though. Go ahead and flip him in. Nice northern Wisconsin eater walleye right there. Well, if you guys haven't tried this technique, you know, super fun, super easy way to fish. You know, if you're not super confident in trolling spinners or running a big spread or stuff like that, this is a super easy way to get into it and kind of get some confidence in a super easy, super fun way to fish this time of year. You know, we just did that video on slip bobber fishing. And when you got fish all bunched up in one spot, like most of the time you would on rock right now, that's a great way to fish. When they're a little bit more scattered and a little more spread out like this, which happens quite a bit in weeds this time of year, when they're not quite outside of the weeds yet, when they're still in the weeds, this is a great way to fish. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe, drop some cool comments on what you guys want to see. We'll be filming the next couple days, hopefully kicking out some exciting content. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.